I'm excited to see the playing field get reset a bit. I think there was a lot of a lot of dumb money being spent in years past. The cost of cash was so cheap in this last decade plus, that there was just a proliferation of silly companies doing silly things, and none of it was actually creating real consumer value, real brand value. And I think you're seeing it now where there's a lot of layoffs, which is very unfortunate. There's a lot of great people in the ecosystem that are now looking for jobs. There's a lot of companies that aren't going to be able to survive, but it will force us to get down to the root value exchange. Are you creating good products that create value for consumers, for your partners, and for advertisers alike? And if you're not, it's going to be very difficult to survive in a recessionary environment.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
I am pleased to be here with Matt Conlin today. Matt and I have known each other, well over probably 15 years plus at this point. And so it's great to catch up with him. He remains the founder and president of Fluent. And so we'll start off with, it was 2010, I think, when you started Fluent. And at the time, email marketing was the foundation. So I'm sure things have evolved a lot since then. You guys have made some acquisitions. And so what's the new elevator pitch?
Well, let me start with a little background. But yes, I'm Matt Conlin. I am co-founder of Fluent. And as of this past year, I am now the chief customer officer.
Oh, okay. So, I think you still have president on the on the LinkedIn there.
Oh, well, I got to update the LinkedIn profile. Yeah, the exciting times. We actually brought in our COO is now our CEO. So very exciting moves last year. We just brought in a new CFO. So just a little backstory, but I too have been in this space for not quite 26 years, but I've been in since 2005 and got my start in performance marketing at that point. And so I'm nipping at the heels of 20 years in the industry, and it's been an incredible time. Not only since starting Fluent have we acquired companies, but in 2015, we too were acquired. So we were acquired by a publicly traded company at that point, and through a long series of events, we got acquired again, ultimately got back control of our company through a spin out, and we became a standalone public company in March of 2018. And so since then, we've been living through all the ups and downs and joys of leading a public company and putting all the right pieces in place, and it's been incredible. So anyway,
on that. That's quite the roller coaster, I'm sure.
Yes, yeah. There's a whole other podcast when we go into detail on all the fun machinations that brought us to today. But to answer your question, we first launched the business. It's a funny story because we had launched as an ad serving business. So we were a lack of a better term, a custom SSP, and we were working with publishers like Yahoo Fantasy Football and Pandora and Publishers Clearinghouse, and helping them monetize their post-transaction inventory. So after someone would sign up or create an account, we had this notion, why don't we serve a relevant ad there? And because someone's in sign-up mode. So if it's contextually relevant and it's targeted relevantly, that consumer is likely to take an action. And so our thought was, rather than serving up a traditional display ad, make the ad more action-oriented. Sign up for a loyalty club or get email marketing updates from fill in the blank brand, and we would then price that inventory on a performance basis. That ended up working really well. The company scaled. We went from 0 to 40 million in our first year, and it was a very exciting time and gave us the capital we need to invest in the business. But a couple years into our journey, we recognized that we needed to make a very strategic pivot and become a publisher. And so after the first few years, we rolled that ad serving tech into our owned and operated websites and started building out our own experiences. And one of the serendipitous things that came out of that is it allowed us to have a first party relationship with consumers. Because when we were just an ad serving company, we didn't have that. And that ended up paying off dividends now in this era where we have a relationship with consumers and we can understand who they are, what their interests are, and help connect them with world-class products and services. And long way of saying the business has evolved quite a bit since those early days. And now the elevator pitch goes something along the lines of, Fluent is a specialist in customer acquisition, and we've developed a platform that allows brands to bid on outcomes. And so we work across a variety of verticals, from mobile gaming, streaming services, consumer packaged goods, fintech, vertical, you name it. And the unique thread is that all the advertisers we work with today are able to buy the outcomes that matter. And that could be anything from an app install, a sign up to their loyalty club, starting a trial, making that first purchase, and we price the inventory accordingly. Underpinning our platform is a portfolio of digital properties, both web and mobile app. And our whole business now is built around building out more sophisticated data science and machine learning algorithms that understand who our consumers are and what are the products and services that are going to add value in their lives. And how do we just get better at making more and more relevant connections between the millions of consumers that we engage with and the great brands that have wonderful products and services that we support from a growth perspective. So that's kind of where we're at today, and we're continuing to grow every single day. And it's certainly an interesting time to be in digital and advertising. So.
Cool. Well, we'll talk a lot more about that, but to sort of stay current and newsworthy, I figured we'd start off with a fun follow-up question, which is, Twitter, right? I mean, we all have opinions about how we would fix Twitter if we were in charge, but we're not. Elon is. And so I'm just curious what your thoughts are, and perhaps we can go back and forth on what it would be a best way to maximize the opportunity of Twitter on a go-forward basis.
So I would say number one, embrace your best people. All I'm seeing, and I'm not an insider, is that he's really doing his best to push people out of the organization. And in my experience, one single leader cannot drive the success of that organization. It takes a village, it takes a team. Twitter has a lot of talented people. And I think step one is get your arms around your best talent. Make sure they're in a good spot. They understand the charter and the mission, the vision of the organization. And I would just maybe change the rhetoric a little bit. It's probably number one. How about you?
I mean, obviously the people are key. I think just overall it was interesting. So his first wave of reduction in force was created like a wave where all of a sudden that went through the industry and ended up with Facebook and Google and Amazon all deciding it was time to potentially pare back. It remains a big question mark as to how intelligent the HR teams are in doing that efficiently, i.e. did they let go of the right people or the wrong people? And of course, in Twitter's case, it made the news that often they had to ask people back. So I agree with you, getting the right people to stay because they have the institutional knowledge is absolutely key. But when I look at the opportunity really for Twitter, I look at the power curve, right? Because every one of those businesses has a power curve or an 80-20 rule or 90-10 rule. And, his biggest asset are probably his top 2,000 or 3,000 Twitter accounts, of which one of his is his,
Yes.
right? But you've got the influencers and sometimes they're brands, but usually they're individuals. And I see those accounts as mostly being the most brand safe accounts, right? So these are the accounts that the brands and advertisers would be most interested in participating in, right? So the fact that you don't refactor the platform to allow those content creators to participate in the revenue and maintain, brand safe content guidelines in exchange for participating in the revenue, it's sort of like a no-brainer, right? Because you could just take the top 2,000, curate those people in and say there's a new tier of advertising that only serves there, right? And you can buy it at the channel level and maybe you layer in the other targeting or not, depends how sophisticated you want to get in version 1 of the ad server. Netflix has already proved with its move into advertising supported content that if you've got great audiences, people don't necessarily need all the targeting right out of the gate. There are some brands that just want tonnage, right? But they want brand safe tonnage.
Yes.
And so for me, that seems like a no-brainer. I'll go to the Kardashians, go to Cristiano Ronaldo, say, listen, we're refactoring the whole platform. Now you're going to get compensated. Again, if is it 50-50, is it 70-30, whatever it is, right? Now you're going to get compensated for your content being out there and being broadcast. How it works on the retweet level, who the heck knows? But the if it's a retweet without content, without comments, I sort of feel like that's still the byproduct of the original splash. That original pebble goes in, and the wave propagates from there. So I still would credit that against the original content creator, right? So if you did that, you'd immediately have like the ultimate brand safe power publisher. Yeah. And for me, that's not even that hard to engineer. Yeah. So that's the first thing I would do if I was in his shoes.
I think about it like this. There's probably it's a lot more complex than this, but there's a 3-point plan. Number one, we talked about, from my perspective, get your arms around your team. Make sure your best people are in a good spot and they're fired up and ready to kind of press forward and build kind of the next generation of the platform. Number two, get your arms around your best creators. To your point, like there is, 80-20 rule applies here. There's 20% that are creating all the content and have all the eyeballs on the platform. So get your arms around your talent, people that are bringing in the masses. And number three, get your arms around the advertisers. This business will fail unless it can drive not only results, but continue to bring in brand dollars, because they feel it is a brand safe environment and they're getting results as a byproduct of their advertising on that platform. And it seems like none of those things are working too well right now. So, but get your arms around the people, get the team itself, the creators, and ultimately the advertisers. And because they seem to be leaving in droves, because either they don't feel good about the leadership, the direction it's going, or the content itself, with all the all the new accounts you can spin up, so long as you pay for the blue check mark, which it rightfully nixed that after about less than two weeks in the market, because it was causing a lot of challenges for major advertisers. So those would be my three priorities.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think if the first two are covered, the third, even if it is a little delay, I think that the marketers will go where the eyeballs are, right? Because right now, there a lot of them are running scared, because it feels like it went from fairly brand unsafe to very brand unsafe, right? And that's not a good place to be pre-recession when budgets are being pared down. So we'll see where it goes. I mean, he's got a lot of smart people around him, and including Jason Calhannis, who was in New York for some of the early days that we were there, and he's of course now out there as a VC. And I think he's getting good counsel from people. So I hope he listens and listens to this conversation and really focuses on at least those first two, so that the advertisers are excited about supporting the new platform. Well, so let's go back to Fluent, because I think email marketing remains foundational, and there's a lot of other push marketing platforms out there now that have evolved since email. You've got obviously SMS, you've got app push notifications, you've got browser push, and they're all super powerful because it allows outward bound messaging, and publishers have embraced those, a lot of those when they have apps, right? A lot of times with a publisher, you'll see the suggestion that you allow push notifications on the browser as well. And I think there's an opportunity there for obviously sponsorship and marketers to get into the act there. So how do you see those all sort of coexisting, the various forms of push?
Well, I think there's going to be a new entrant in the space. First and foremost, I've heard that iOS or Apple is going to be launching its own version of push notifications soon for Safari browsers. And so I think that'll be interesting. But I think, if you're a marketer, having a robust, CRM and messaging strategy is one of the most efficient ways to engage your consumers. And you think about, all the different heavy costs associated with your paid media efforts. Once you have them in the door, retaining them and re-engaging them via the plethora of push tools out there, from actual push notifications, SMS, and email, they're just a critical part of any good marketer's toolkit, right? And also add that the market's evolving. People don't leverage, they don't use, emails, not just about getting into the inbox anymore. It is that form of identification.
Yeah.
And it is ultimately the key to identify your audience on different addressable platforms. Fluent's one of them, right? It's one of the places that you can say, here's my customer file. I want to make sure I'm serving the right offer, the right promotion to this consumer, because this is where they are. So it's not just about how do I reach that person in their inbox via this email, but how do I reach that consumer on a variety of addressable platforms by using email as the key.
And do you feel like the phone number, the mobile phone number, and SMS is sort of another key identifier that can be used for the purposes of sort of creating these audiences?
I'd say for the past 5 years, you're starting to see SMS arise as the preferred way to engage. And a lot of consumers, I mean, I'm one of them. I'd almost prefer the brands communicate to me via SMS. And it makes it a lot easier too with some of the new technology. I can sign up for a loyalty club very easy at my local coffee shop via SMS, and it doesn't require a lengthy sign up process via email. And so I'm a big fan of it, and I can see that continuing to take shape.
How should brands think about the permission relationship the same or differently with regards to email and SMS? I sort of feel like, for me personally, the bar is higher for SMS. Like, I'm more willing to give away an email. Besides, I have several of those, right? I've got sort of my spam inbox that I can share when I just need to have a quid pro quo with a marketer to get on a list or to get a discount. Whereas, like, I only have a Google Voice number and a real number, which I can still, again, use it to sort of sort who gets into which SMS box. But I feel like the bar is higher, that there needs to be more value delivered.
That's key, value exchange.
Yeah.
There better be a very compelling call to action and a reason why me as a consumer should share that very valuable information. And so long as the right value is there, speaking personally, it makes sense, right? So yeah.
Well, we've all seen marketers succeed and fail at SMS marketing and email marketing. So what common mistakes are marketers making these days that you sort of, when you see them, you sort of cringe and say, oh my God, I can't believe they did that?
It's a very good question. I would say that the carriers have the same obligation that the ISPs, still do and always kind of held over. But for a long time, you relied on Gmail to keep the good emails from coming in and the bad emails from entering your inbox. Put those somewhere else. And now the carriers, which really were never built for this purpose, now have that same responsibility and obligation to make sure that the good text messages are coming in and the bad spam ones are staying out, right? And you're even seeing it on the new iOS platform. When you go to delete a text message, I don't know if you've seen this, the first thing that pops up is report junk. Report junk. So now all of a sudden, the SMS is becoming no different than your inbox, where I can report an SMS message as junk or send it to my spam SMS, which doesn't really exist. I guess it just gets blocked at the carrier level. So your question is more around like, what are some mistakes? I think it comes down to creating good content. The mediums are very different. It's got to be shorter, snappier, and a bit more to the point within SMS. You can do a bit more of, conveying the value proposition and the offer and more about the brand story via email. But again, it's just making sure that you're personalizing and customizing your marketing communications for the channel.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's interesting. Just for all forms of media at this point, the Did It team, my day job, and the Giving Forward team have both noticed that creative matters and messaging matters more than ever, right? I mean, you're out there buying media when you're doing the paid media, often in an auction, and bad creative can just tank a campaign, whereas great creative can allow you to afford media you could not otherwise afford. And so are you seeing the same thing with your team, like that can be the make it or break it for the campaign?
I still remember one of my favorite programs we ran years ago for a large CPG company. And, we were going back and forth on the subject lines, and, they'd spent all this money with an agency and said, this is the right subject line for us. We're like, I think that subject line's not going to work. And they started coming up, hey, we're not getting very good deliverability. We think it's the quality of the opt-in that you're driving is Fluent. And we're like, are you sure? Because your subject line is an acronym for spam. So in the subject line, it said spam. And we're like, I'm pretty sure we are not the reason that you are not getting deliverability into the inbox. We are pretty sure it's that you have this big fancy acronym, but it spells spam. I won't share anymore, but it was one of those things where you have a creative and this brilliant idea that completely tanked campaign performance. And I think it's never been truer now, but better creative, better promotions that are more relevant for consumers is ultimately the cornerstone of good marketing.
Yeah, a follow-up on that. One of the challenges we do face, because we understand the importance of creative, is one school of thought is if you come up with a really, really great creative, it can work against everybody in your target audience, different personas within a bigger target audience. Whereas another frame of thought is, or another school of thought is, well, actually, some of these personas, these segments are pretty big. I think they deserve their own creative, right? And good creative takes time and energy and human resources, human capital, right? And it changes the way you traffic a campaign. So any suggestions on how to find that happy middle where you sort of decide, okay, some personas are different and they need to be messaged to differently versus, oh no, I can come up with a creative that's so good, it works for everybody.
As we know, one size does not fit all, right? I'll go back to my earlier comment. Personalization is key. And, and I think it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of years because, the big platforms and a lot of the privacy legislations are moving us to a place where we want to move away from personalization. And I can see the benefit for consumers. I can also see how that's going to make things a lot worse. We're going to go back to the stone age of marketing, right? If you can't personalize a message, I'm going to continue to get irrelevant content, irrelevant offers that I am personally not going to engage with. I would much prefer that when I'm marketed to by a brand or when I see an ad, that it's use the information that's available about me to make sure it's relevant. And if you're not utilizing those tools or in a future state, we can't, I have some concerns. I think consumers are going to get pretty frustrated about the lack of personalization and relevancy that we see in the years to come. So,
yeah, I would agree with you. It's sort of an unintended consequence of the drive towards privacy, right? And where's that balance? Because I don't think people I think generally understand that ad-supported content is the reason it's free, right? And even the ones who turn the ad blockers on probably know that. But the reality is like if it was relevant, you'd be less interested in blocking it. I always like to think about like the fall version of Vogue magazine, right? It was mostly advertising, fashion advertising, but that was half of the reason that the people bought it was for the advertising because the new season was out, and
the ads were high impact, quality, they look great. Yeah.
So I sort of feel like there was a period where I think maybe targeting was misused digitally, and it created this backlash. And sort of the unintended consequence of that is now it's more difficult to curate ads and target them to the same level of precision as we sort of saw at the peak of precision. But I'm sure hopefully it'll find some kind of a balance, and we'll have to watch the platforms carefully to see if they find a way to empower us to give relevant advertising to consumers.
Yeah, I think more than going one step further, the personalization is of course key, but we're also finding more and more marketers are leveraging this kind of multi-channel playbook, right? And what we found in some of our efforts is that when a brand is marketed to consumer via just email, right, they might have a 2x ROAS, but when they apply that same, the same strategy to direct mail, SMS, and some of the addressable channels, that ROAS number is 5-6x stronger, right? And so just being more thoughtful about how to leverage all the available channels to reach consumers in the places that they're most likely engaging and are most likely to convert.
So yeah, follow-up question relates to sort of trackability, right? So while we lost a little of fidelity in the ability to personalize with some of the platform changes, erosion of third-party cookie, IDFA, et cetera, we're also losing the ability to track to some extent. And so the definition of performance marketing has had to somewhat evolve to reflect the fact that, well, you may not always have the perfect digital paper trail, right, on tracking that you would prefer to have. So, how can performance marketers retain that sort of performance marketing mindset that they got accustomed to under the new reality, right? Which is that you're not always going to have that last cookie, that last touch point sitting in your analytics platform to tell you what happened.
Yeah. The age-old question of what is the right attribution logic and strategy to deploy? I would just say in general that the tools that performance marketers have at their disposal have evolved tremendously over the past few years, right? So before we go over everything that's going to change in the years to come, I will tell you that from where I sit, there was a time when, 10, 15 years ago, you were lucky if you could track kind of last click attribution and, fire back to your media partners. Yeah, I did get this customer and here's the action they took. And we'd like to get more of those. Can you do lookalike modeling? And now some of the platforms, specifically in the mobile app ecosystem, not only can you start to build audience profiles and do some modeling around consumers that, let's say, installed an app, but you can go 2-3 steps deeper and determine, did this consumer reach a certain level? Did they actually link their bank account? And the idea is keep it all privacy safe. I don't need to know anything about that consumer other than, did this anonymous user take an action that's valuable for an advertiser? Now, to me, that's really what's key is in performance marketing. What I want to know is that, for instance, when I put $1 into the Fluent platform, I get $2, $3, $10 back. Now, it stops working if you can't report back to us around, are these anonymized consumers taking those valuable actions? We have no way to optimize around, those consumers that are, that might install, but then churn or uninstall or start a free trial or buy a product and never buy again, versus those that take the initial action, become lifetime valuable. Because there are opportunities to identify more of those extremely valuable users that take those valuable events for brands. So I'll tell you, I'm just encouraged because the tools that we have at our fingertips now are more robust than ever. And the deprecation of the cookie, IDFA, it's going to be fun to see how smart marketers work around all these challenges. But I will tell you, performance marketers will prevail. We will figure out a way forward to help provide value to consumers and to the brands. I'm very confident in that.
I got my fingers crossed, and I think you're right. I think my key takeaway from your point earlier is just the fact that you can close the loop anonymously. You don't need the PII to close the loop, right?
Correct.
So as long as you can close the loop and you can do it anonymously, you can sort of have your performance marketing cake and eat it too. Like, you may not know it was Matt Conlin who converted, right? As a result,
you need to know that user 1, 2, 3
right.
did convert, and that's all we need.
Yeah,
that's all we need.
Yeah. So as long as the hooks are in place to be able to, anonymize you, turn you into a particular user ID, and close the loop there, which media is working. You can double down on the stuff that works and kill the stuff that isn't working, and that's what the performance marketer wants, right? Is the ability to double down on what's working. So that is the most exciting part, I think, is that the tool sets are starting to evolve at the platform levels to be able to do that while being cognizant of people's privacy preferences.
Yeah, spot on.
So the 2023, nobody knows what's going to happen. There's sort of a potential for a recession.
No, I do. I actually do know what's going to happen. But
okay,
continue your point.
Well, I'll take my stock picking advice from you as well then. But I remember I'm 28 years in this, 26 as did it, and so I've been through a couple of these roller coasters. And the brand marketers who shouldn't cut spend, they usually often cut the spend. So that means that media gets cheaper, and the performance marketers actually often double down during recessions and
Yes,
crush
yes.
it. So do you think that's going to happen if we hit a recession in 2023?
Yes, I do. So I too have been through a couple of these cycles, and I think what's different now, though, think back to like 2008, right? So
Right.
at that point, I think the data is something like less than half of advertisers were fully invested in digital, right? And there was so much money still being deployed into traditional channels from TV, radio, newspaper, out of home, et cetera, that overall spend got absolutely crushed during 2008 recession. However, enough of it was shifting over to digital that if you were in performance marketing in particular, you didn't even miss a beat. Because while overall spend was coming down, there was enough migrating to more accountable channels like digital advertising and performance marketing that performance scaled during that period. Now, we're in a much different time now. Fast forward, 14 years since that last huge recession, and every advertiser in the world has a digital strategy. You have to have a robust digital strategy. So now I think the playing field is a little bit different, and brand spend will suffer. There's just no doubt, right? I think you're hearing this from a lot of our partners. CFOs are tight in the belt. We need to be more mindful about where we spend our money. We need to preserve cash. We're in profit maximization mode. So fine. Let's focus on ROAS. Where are you going to find return on your ad spend? Performance marketing channels. And what we're starting to hear from a lot of our partners is we'll go into meetings and say, hey, we know ROAS is the most important thing. And so we got to just focus on quality, which means in many cases, that means less scale, less volume, right? Less growth. And what I've found is energizing and very encouraging about what's to come is that those same averages, okay, wait, yes, ROAS and return on our ad spend is very important, but I also need growth. And what I want to be able to do is I still want to be able to scale, but I just want to pay the right price for it. And I'll happily pay a much richer bounty for a more valuable consumer. And I just want to make sure I right price that consumer that is valuable to me, but just not as valuable as that MVC, that most valuable customer. So it's all about right pricing, because as much as we were like, okay, the CFOs are tightening belts and there's less spend, there is going to be less spend. But the spend that is going to be deployed is just going to be focused on, I want scale and I want to make sure it's right priced. I want scale and ROAS, period.
Yeah, I would agree with you that's likely what we'll see. I think the other thing that's changed since the last recession is that at the time, the business intelligence data wasn't there to know the best customer from the average customer as to where they came from and what made them different, right? And now that you can move away from just a regular ROAS or regular CAC to, wait a minute, I want more of my power customers. How can I get more of those? Because I'm willing to pay 2x, 3x the price for those.
Correct.
Because they're not my average customer. They're the one that's, LTV is high or AOV is high, right? So something is different about those customers. And, the ecosystem has evolved to the point where at least at this point, I'd have to guess for the serious marketers, maybe 60% of them are there. There's a whole lot who still aren't there yet. They don't know the difference between their average customer and their power customer yet, or they can't really predict, or have the feedback loop to deploy that intelligence into their media buying and into their marketing. So I think that some of them are still on that journey, but for the ones who are, gone down that pathway, I think that's going to empower them to really crush it in a recessionary environment.
Yep, no doubt. And I think just with any recession, there's got to be some winners and some losers, right?
Yeah.
And the smartest marketers that can work through some of the anticipated obstacles will come out on top. So it'll be interesting to see who wins and loses over the next couple of years.
Yeah, the other thing that I think I'm looking forward to seeing, I love your perspective on, is when a marketer is starting to tap out performance channels, right? Because there is sort of an elasticity of each channel. You reach a point of diminishing marginal returns, and they have to move up funnel, or like maybe at least to mid funnel.
Yeah.
Any recommendations on how they should think about that mid-funnel? I like to sort of tell them, listen, we can construct experiments so that we understand the interaction effects between the media, right? So you'll still know, for example, making search not just a media channel, but also a leading indicator, right? Like, because if you're doing something else in a particular geography, search volume spikes. It's a pretty good leading indicator that what you're doing is working, right? So that's what I've been telling them as they have to move some of the money up funnel, and if they're tapped out in search, or they're tapped out in social, or they're tapped out in a performance channel.
Yeah, funny anecdote, but we are starting. This is the first year we started spending a lot more into radio, and so we're performance marketers spending on radio. And what we found was similar to what you're calling out is when we did localized radio ads, we'd see our search activity spike in those areas. And,
absolutely.
And that was ultimately an indicator that we're going to see really good engagement in those geos, because we're now coupling kind of an upper funnel channel like radio with a mid to lower funnel channel like search to drive outcomes for our partners. But anyways, what I would say was, every advertiser wants more SEO because the highest intent possible. They want more search. But the reality is that channel, like every other channel, has a cap. There is a max amount that you can get from any given channel. We've also found that a lot of partners a healthy marketing mix today has the duopoly or the triopoly of Facebook, Google, and Amazon in the mix, but you need to have that healthy mix. And I'd say before you have to even, because if you're focused on bottom funnel and you're a performance marketer and you're trying to drive outcomes, before you even have to go to mid and upper funnel opportunities and executions, make sure you're maxing out all of the bottom funnel channels that exist. There has been a proliferation of opportunities and new platforms like Fluent, for example, that help customers with driving those bottom funnel outcomes. And so what we're seeing more and more is advertisers, well, I have way too much of my spend with the duopoly, and I've been actively investing into new channel, new partner identification. And guess what? There's a lot of good options out there, right? So think about all the opportunities that exist with an affiliate. There is 1,000,001, coupon and cashback and, other types of rewarded ecosystems that help consumers discover new products. And I think that's what I would say first is make sure you're maxing out all of those outcome-oriented bottom funnel executions before you even go to that mid and upper funnel.
Cool. Well, yeah, I agree 100%. So without making any forward-looking statements, what has you excited for next year?
I'm excited to see the playing field get reset a bit. I think there was a lot of dumb money being spent in years past. The cost of cash was so cheap in this last decade plus that there was just a proliferation of silly companies doing silly things, and none of it was actually creating real consumer value or real brand value. And I think you're seeing it now where there's a lot of layoffs, which is very unfortunate. There's a lot of great people in the ecosystem that are now looking for jobs. There's a lot of companies that aren't going to be able to survive, but it will force us to get down to the root value exchange. Are you creating good products that create value for consumers, for your partners, and for advertisers alike? And if you're not, it's going to be very difficult to survive in a recessionary environment. And so I think that's, to me, is what is, I wouldn't say I'm excited about it, but it is something that, if you were to open, last couple of years, you couldn't do anything wrong, right? If you were a marketer, every single thing you touched, you looked like you were brilliant because consumer spending was at an all-time high. And, and so it gave everyone a false sense of security. And I think what we have to look forward to now is, okay, put that aside. Consumers are going to be more thoughtful than ever about where they want to spend their time and where they want to spend their money. And so let's just make sure as an industry we're evolving around that, and then we're making sure that we're helping consumers get access to the products and the content that are value add to them.
Absolutely. I would agree. It's sort of, an uncomfortable but healthy shift, I think, is what's coming.
Yeah,
in the
I
next
think
year.
that's even better said. Uncomfortable, but it's healthy, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
let's not even get started on crypto and how that's kind of getting. But
Yeah, that's a different podcast for a different day. Well, it was great catching up, Matt. I look forward to watching your continued evolution as you deliver value to the ecosystem, which clearly you have thus far. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in the Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.